The last Saturday in October always means one thing in Jacksonville: Florida, Georgia. Along the banks of the St. Johns River, both fan bases convene for one of the most intense battles in all of college football. Led by Mark Richt, the Dogs reignited the rivalry in 2007.
That's the whole team.
The whole team is on the field right now.
Then Urban Meyer's Gators snapped back 1 year later. In 2010, a rare instance of a coach taunting a player with the player prevailing. 2 years later, a fumble was forced and tears were shed. Fast forward a decade, and both programs are in much different spots. Georgia, fresh off its first national championship in 41 years, looking for another.
You look at what you've done well, what you've done poorly, and how can we do it better? And we sit down as coaches and say, all right, what do we need to do to win the next 5 games, 6 games, and we target that area.
Florida is on its 5th head coach in 12 years, searching for stability and success. And Billy Napier is fully aware of the opportunity that lies ahead.
Defending national champs and the #1 team in the country presents a great opportunity, and certainly we look forward to it.
These two programs hate each other so much, they can't even agree on how many times they've played. But one thing is for certain: the stadium in Jacksonville will be split down the middle, with red and black on one side and orange and blue on the other. And this gathering won't be friendly. It's a rivalry that represents what we love about college football, and we've got a front row seat on CBS.
That's right. It's time. Gather together. All your friends, your family, your relatives will meet in Jacksonville for a big old party. Barrett Sallee joining Tom Fornelli and myself, Chip Patterson, as we go around the country, conference by conference, with our very best bet. So we will begin in the Southeastern Conference. Tom, what is your best bet for the SEC in Week 9?
On that game we just watched the package for, it's the Florida-Georgia game. I am taking the under 56.5 in this one. And part of the reason is, who would have thought before the year began that this would not be the biggest game in the SEC East this weekend? It's not. Tennessee and Kentucky is the bigger game as far as the standings are concerned. But I think when I look at this game, the under has been a good play in this rivalry in the last few years as it is. It is 7-1-1 in the last 9 meetings between these two, all in Jacksonville. And I think we're going to see something similar this weekend, because a lot of what Florida has done offensively depends on Anthony Richardson making plays happen with his legs when plays break down, keeping drives alive. The problem for Florida with that in this matchup is Georgia has 11 guys on its defense who are just as big and just as fast as Anthony Richardson are, which will negate his ability to keep doing that time and time again. So I think the Bulldogs defense is going to really hinder what Florida's able to do offensively. And I think on the other side, look at the line. It's a 3-touchdown spread. Georgia is likely to have a lead in the second half, and it'll probably be a reasonably sized one. Well, Georgia's got a bigger game next weekend waiting for them with Tennessee in a game that will decide the SEC East Division. So I won't be surprised at all if Georgia builds up a lead in the second half, just kind of sits on the ball, takes the air out of it, and starts getting ready for the Vols. Give me the under.
Yeah, I like that pick. I think the rationale is absolutely sound, because I agree with you. I think Georgia will throttle down. I'm going to say with a total, I'm going to go under in the Ole Miss Texas A&M game. It's at 55.5, depending on where you look. And right now, look, this is a game with weakness versus weakness. Do you think Ole Miss's defense is better than Texas A&M's offense, which is a really, really sad comparison? But right now, I think because Ole Miss does generate tackles for loss, they do get behind the sticks. A&M's the last team that can convert 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10. They don't have the offense to do that. Their quarterback situation is a mess. Haynes King might play, but he's not going to be 100%. Connor Wegman's a true freshman. And look, this is going to be a game where, yeah, Texas A&M might score a little bit more than normal. But a little bit more for Texas A&M is a very, very low bar. So to me, I think Ole Miss gets up a little early. They crank it up a little bit into the second half, get things fine-tuned going into the bye week because they know Alabama's around the corner, and then shut it down. And I'd be surprised at this point if Texas A&M's able to get 17 points. So take Ole Miss, but also I think the better bet is take the under, because I just don't see how Texas A&M's going to score all that much.
Yeah, my best bet in the SEC is also the Florida-Georgia under. Georgia unders 5-1 on the season. And what happened in that one, do you ask? a garbage time touchdown by Auburn in a total that finished at 52 that closed at 49.5. So we are 2.5 points or one garbage time touchdown away from Georgia unders being undefeated on the season. You throw that into the X's and O's, the way these teams match up against each other, the fact that it's a rivalry game, and with Tennessee on deck, I like it. Key number. My best bet in the SEC is also on the under. What about pivoting our attention to the Big Ten? Barrett, I'll get your first crack at this. What is your best bet for the Big Ten here in Week 9?
More unders. I'm going to take Michigan State under 55.5. I think Michigan State's had some success through the year. I just don't see it happening against Michigan. And look, I know the history of this, how Michigan State's won the last 2. I don't really care because the rosters are different. And I think right now when you look at what Michigan excels in, they run the ball and they play defense. And to me, that means the football will be deflating. It'll be deflating quicker than Tom Brady. And that's not necessarily true of the deflated footballs issue. But to me, I just think right now this is going to be an old school game. Michigan's not going to be threatened by Michigan State at all. And by the end of the third quarter, this game is going to be out of reach. You're talking about a fourth quarter that'll fly by because I don't think either team will be in it. So I'll take the under. I think Michigan's going to have a relatively easy time scoring, and Michigan State just has nothing that gives me confidence.
All unders all day long because I'm on another under. Give me the under in Penn State and Ohio State. When I look at this matchup, obviously, it's huge. This is an absolute must-win for Penn State, which already got trounced by Michigan a couple weeks ago and cannot afford another loss if it wants to even dream of winning the Big Ten this year. But when we watch Penn State play, it's at its best offensively when it is able to run the ball. I don't think it's going to be able to run the ball against this Ohio State defense because while the offense gets all of the attention, Jim Knowles has done a tremendous job of overhauling this defense and revamping it in his first year there. And this has been a top 10 defense against the run and in limiting explosive plays. So I don't think Penn State's going to be able to move the ball on the ground. That means Sean Clifford is going to have to do everything on his own through the passing game. And we've seen Sean Clifford, when it's all on him, sometimes it works. Against better teams, it doesn't. And Ohio State is one of the better teams. On the flip side, the Buckeyes offense is phenomenal. There are no defenses in existence that can stop C.J. Stroud and these Buckeyes receivers. But if there's a defense that is better equipped than most to at least slow it down, it's this Penn State defense who I think matches up pretty well in the secondary. So they'll be able to take away some of the explosive plays that the Buckeyes rely on in the passing game. So I think Ohio State then has to turn more to its ground game, which will keep the clock running. I don't think this is going to be a rock fight or anything. I think we're going to get into the 50s, but I think having the total in the 60s is a little bit of a wishful thinking. So give me the under.
The last week in October, the leaves are changing. The wind is crispy and chilly. And you just asked 3 college football experts for their best bet in the Big Ten, and they took 3 unders on 3 different games. Give me the under 41 in Minnesota and Rutgers. This is a get-right game for a Minnesota defense that I think is pretty well coached. Maybe was a little bit overrated thanks to the quality of competition, but after getting shredded by Penn State, they need a bounce back in the worst way. Hello, Rutgers. What a great opponent for a bounce back when your defense needs to get out there and get some stops. And what does Minnesota offensively love to do? Run the football. One thing that Rutgers as a football team, you can say they do pretty well. They're among the 4 or 5 better teams in the conference in terms of run defense. So I think that this is a game probably in somewhere around 31-3, maybe even makes a sweat with like a 30-7, but this thing will not go over the total of 41. Minnesota runs the ball, plays good defense, plays a little field position, and we get another under in the Big Ten. What about the Atlantic Coast Conference? Tom, it's your favorite league. I know it's your favorite league. The conference that props up Clemson. Where are you going? Tigers are off this week. Where are you going for your best bet in the ACC?
Going to the only other good team in the conference, Chip. Give me Wake Forest -3.5 at Louisville. If you heard Wake Forest coach Dave Clawson in his press conference this week, he was mad. He was salty. He was talking about how nobody believes in his team no matter what it accomplishes. And after their 45-year-old players graduate this year, they'll probably drop off the face of the earth. He also talked about how his quarterback, Sam Hartman, is one of the most disrespected and underappreciated players in the country. And he's right. because Sam Hartman has been one of the best quarterbacks in the country for a few years now. And he mentioned how last year Hartman finished second, all ACC, second team at the quarterback spot. The first teamer is gone. They come back this year. And he says there are lists calling his quarterback the 5th best quarterback in the conference. One of the 4 that he thinks is ahead of him, or at least was on the minds of somebody that I don't know if really made this list, but Dave Clawson seems to think they did, was Louisville quarterback Malik Cunningham. This game is personal. He's going to give Sam Hartman all the ammunition he needs to outplay Cunningham. And also, let's not forget, a few years ago, most of the people involved might be gone, but there was the WikiLeaks scandal, and Dave Clawson, any chance he gets to run it up on this Louisville team, he's going to take it, lay the points with the Deacs. They're going to win big.
Love some pettiness. Pettiness in college football is what makes it great, among other things. But I'm gonna stick with the unders. Have you watched Georgia Tech play offense? No, because I don't think Georgia Tech's watched Georgia Tech play offense either. It's been absolutely dreadful, and the quarterback situation is an absolute mess. Jeff Sims, when healthy, decent, but he's got some injury concerns going up against Florida State. And Florida State's, I think, done a pretty good job of sticking with it. Their offense is not necessarily something to write home about, but Jordan Travis is effective enough. It's a low number. I understand that, but Georgia Tech's going to have a very hard time scoring. It hurts. It's difficult for them to score against air, much less 11 actual football players. And Florida State's got 11 pretty good ones on the defensive side of the ball. So I'll take the under in Florida State, Georgia Tech.
I'm going to go to a game that I think has far more points. Let's go to Chapel Hill, nightcap, big game in the ACC Coastal Division as Pitt tries to rebound from a loss at Louisville with a win against the Tar Heels, currently in the division lead. And what I see are points aplenty. First of all, let's look at Pitt. They've got a running back named Izzy Abanaconda. He's one of the best running backs in the ACC. He's already had a 300-plus yard game with 6 touchdowns, breaking Tony Dorsett's school records. And I think he's going to have an absolute field day against a North Carolina defense that ranks dead last in the ACC in run defense, number 110 nationally. But he will also be answered time and time again by Drake May, one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football, currently right near the top of all the rankings with his touchdown passes. And so it's going to be a game where, no, it is not done the same way, with Pitt using explosive runs and a big dose of Abanaconda, while North Carolina is getting its explosive plays through the air with Drake May making it happen. But I think these two teams exchange a whole lot of touchdowns, and our total finishes above 70. What about turning our attention to the Big 12? We already got a check-in from Josh Pate on the scene in Manhattan. Barrett, are you going to go there, or is there another game in Big 12 action that has your attention for your best bet?
I'm going to go with TCU, and I'll lay those points. And I'll be honest, when the odds came out on Sunday, I thought this was a typo. I did not think that TCU would only be a 7.5-point favorite on the road, but here they are. And look, we talked about this on this show last week, how TCU every single week, it seems like they've been having to get up for a big opponent. Well, it hadn't bothered them. Granted, they've started slow the last couple of games, but it hasn't bothered them. And this is West Virginia. This is not like it's a power Big 12 team. This is a West Virginia team that's relatively broken. They might make a change at head coach. They haven't been consistent offensively. And this is a TCU offense that strikes like a cobra. When they can go from 0 to 60 in like 2.5 seconds. So West Virginia is not able to keep up in a situation like that. I think this is at least a double-digit point game. And honestly, like unless if it was a night game in Morgantown, okay, I get it. But a disgruntled fan base coupled with a noon start, I just don't see it.
I'm looking to another line in the Big 12 that kind of caught me by surprise, and it made no sense. Baylor's catching 2.5 points on the road against Texas Tech. Now, I like Texas Tech. I think Joey McGuire is doing a very good job with that program, and that's going to be a team that in the few coming years is going to be one of the better teams in the Big 12. But right now, their role is just kind of being a pain in the butt before they lose to the better teams in the conference. And I think that's what we're going to see on Saturday against Baylor, a team filled with players that Joey McGuire helps recruit to Waco. But I think that if you look at this Baylor team overall, they're better than Texas Tech at most spots. So even if this game is on the road in Lubbock and it's going to be kind of a loud atmosphere, something difficult for the Bears to deal with, it's not the first time Baylor's had to deal with a difficult road atmosphere in the Big 12. So I like them to go on the road. I'm taking the points, but I'm telling you right now, Baylor's going to win the game. So if you want to just bet the money line, that's fine too.
little money line sprinkle from Tom Fornelli. I'm going to go back to that game that Barrett mentioned right at the top. I'm going to go to TCU and West Virginia. The names that stand out and the reasons that this is important are Bryce Ford Wheaton, C.J. Donaldson, and yes, even J.T. Daniels, because I think that what we are going to see is that TCU's offense is going to score a bunch against West Virginia, and that's going to give a lot of reps to those playmakers. And so with West Virginia at least having enough high-end skill talent, I know that they were dreadful against Texas Tech last week, but playing at home, especially with a big dog like TCU in town, I think that we are going to see the Mountaineers have one of their better performances of the entire season. I think they can get us enough points to be able to continue to push the pace forward, and TCU's own offensive success giving West Virginia's offense more cracks at it, I think that leads to enough touchdowns that, just like a lot of TCU games this year, will go over that total. What about in the Pac-12? Tom, a lot of options, maybe a couple trappy games as we've got USC going on the road. UCLA's got to put the pieces back together. Oh, what is your best bet in the Pac-12 for week 9?
Yeah, I like a lot of things in the Pac-12 this weekend, but I think the best bet on the board is the under 76.5 between USC and Arizona, because I'm not sure why the total is this high to begin with. I understand that Arizona's defense is putrid and that USC has an explosive offense, but that's been the case for USC pretty much all season long. And if you go up and down their schedule, outside of last week's game or 2 weeks ago against Utah in the 43-42 Utah win, none of them saw final scores creeping this high. This is a USC team that's typically winning games in the upper 60s range as far as total points. And I think this is going to be a very similar approach here, because the Trojans are going to get a lead in this one. They are going to win this game. And Arizona might be able to get some points against this USC defense, but not enough to threaten the Trojans. So by the time we get to the second half, USC is going to kind of put the clamps on things, start running the ball, handing it off, and getting out of there with the win so they can move on to face more bigger opponents in the Pac-12 and prepare for a Pac-12 title run. So I think this total is way too high. Give me the under, because it's been 5 minutes since we took an under on this show. So I wanted to get us back on track.
I agree with the under, Tom, but I'm actually going to lay the points with USC for a lot of the reasons you said. But adding on to that, I think because Arizona is going to be kind of in desperation mode in the second half, USC will have control. That'll force Arizona to take a few risks. And what do we know about USC's defense? They take advantage of bad decisions. When a team gets in a bind, like I think they're going to put Arizona in, then USC forces turnovers. So yes, I agree with you. USC is going to try to deflate the football and get out of there, but at the same time, Arizona is going to do anything they possibly can to try to stay with it, and that will backfire. So I'll take USC, I'll lay the points, but Tom, I agree with you on the under as well.
I'm going to go to UCLA, which has a bounce back opportunity going up against Stanford. And not only is that an opportunistic opponent for such a situation, we also might have a little bit of market value, because on a down-to-down basis, UCLA was right there with Oregon. Now, Oregon did a better job than UCLA of finishing drives, and also some of that aggressive calls in special teams allowed the Ducks to steal a possession. But for the most part, UCLA played well enough to win. And if UCLA had won that game, this spread would be much, much bigger. I think UCLA probably is a 3-touchdown favorite in this game, and only coming off a loss do we find UCLA catching something under 17. So I like the value and I like the team, because upon further review, hey, that's the name of a Cover 3 episode, the Bruins are still just as good as we thought they were, even after taking that loss to the Ducks. Well, for daily picks and all the kinds of props and previews that you need, make sure that you are watching the Early Edge podcast. We've got a college football special Wednesdays live at 3 p.m. and 10 a.m. every single day. Scan that QR code or download wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.